The hidden rules of the game. Negotiation. It's a word that makes most people uneasy. We picture tense boardrooms, aggressive car salesmen, or high-stakes political summits. But that picture is dangerously incomplete. The truth is, negotiation isn't a rare scheduled event. It is the very fabric of human interaction. We negotiate constantly. We negotiate with our partners about where to eat dinner. We negotiate with our children about bedtime. We negotiate with our bosses for a raise, and with ourselves about getting out of bed in the morning. Life is an endless series of negotiations. And here's a startling fact. Most of us are terrible at it. We rely on flawed logic. We give in to fear. We compromise when we shouldn't. And we walk away, leaving immense value on the table. We play a game without ever learning the rules. And the cost isn't just financial. It's a loss of opportunity, of connection, of control over our own lives. We've been led to negotiation is a battle of logic and reason, a civilized debate where the best argument wins. But that's a lie. It's a convenient fiction that makes us feel safe. But it's the very thing holding us back. What if I told you that the key to winning any negotiation, from saving a life to buying a car, has almost a real power, lies in understanding the messy, irrational, emotional, and hidden currents that drive human behavior? This is the world our guide was forced to master. We're not talking about a business school professor or a theoretical academic. We're talking about Chris Voss. For over 2 decades, Voss stood on the front lines of the FBI, rising to become their lead international kidnapping negotiator. He wasn't negotiating for a better commission. He was negotiating for human lives. His counterparts weren't executives in suits. They were terrorists, kidnappers, and desperate criminals armed with guns and nothing to lose. In his world, a bad deal didn't mean a smaller bonus. It meant someone died. Out of these crucibles of life and death conflict, the FBI forged a new playbook for negotiation. It was a system born not in a classroom, but in the field, tested and refined in the most extreme situations imaginable. It's a playbook that turns conventional wisdom on its head. It throws out the idea of compromise, dismisses the chase for yes, and embraces the hidden power of no. It teaches you to wield empathy not as a weakness, but as a tactical weapon. In this exclusive audiobook summary, we will dissect that playbook. We will journey with Chris Voss from the hallowed halls of Harvard, where he shattered the theories of the world's top academics, to the chaotic streets of Haiti and the dense jungles of the Philippines, where his techniques were put to the ultimate test. You're about to learn how to quiet the voices in your head and in your counterparts, to create instant rapport and to bend reality itself. You'll discover the simple psychological tools that give you the upper hand by giving the other side the illusion of control. We will explore how to identify the 3 types of negotiators and how to handle each one. We will unpack a step-by-step bargaining system called the Ackerman model, designed to get you your price without alienating your counterpart. And finally, we will learn how to spot the game-changing hidden information, the black swans, that can transform any negotiation. This isn't just about becoming a better negotiator. This is about reclaiming control of the conversations that shape your life. Are you ready to learn the new rules? Part 1. The illusion of rationality. The Harvard experiment, when the street smarts beat the book smarts. Imagine walking into the Olympic trials for negotiation. That's what Harvard Law School's winter negotiation course felt like in 2006. It was filled with the best and brightest, future titans of industry and law, all armed with the cutting-edge theories of negotiation. And then there was Chris Voss, the only outsider, a former beat cop from Kansas City turned FBI agent. He wasn't there with complex mathematical models or authoritative acronyms like BATNA and ZOPA. He was there with skills forged in the chaos of hostage situations. But this story doesn't start in that classroom. It starts a little earlier, in an office with an ambush. Robert Mnookin, the director of the Harvard Negotiation Research Project, had invited Voss for a coffee chat. An honor, but an intimidating one. Mnookin was a giant in the field, author of Bargaining with the Devil, but the chat quickly turned into a high-stakes role-play. Another professor, a specialist who'd spent years as a negotiator for the Israeli Defense Forces, walked in. A tape recorder was placed on the table. It was a setup. Mnookin leaned in, a smile playing on his lips. "We've got your son, Voss. Give us $1 million or he dies." What would you do? Your heart pounds, your mind races. Logic dictates you should assess your options, calculate your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, and engage in a problem-solving dialogue. This is what Harvard taught. But Voss did something different. He didn't argue. He didn't make a counteroffer. He looked Mnookin straight in the eye, paused, and then in a calm, slow voice, he asked a simple question. "How am I supposed to do that?" The room shifted. The brilliant professor was flustered. The entire frame of the conversation had changed. It was no longer about whether Voss would pay. It was about how Mnookin would solve Voss's logistical problems. To every threat, every demand, Voss calmly repeated variations of that same open-ended question. "I'm sorry, Robert. How do I know he's even alive? How can I get you any money right now, much less $1 million, if I don't even know he's alive?" He wasn't saying no. He was asking for help. And in doing so, he gave his counterparts the illusion of control, while boxing them in completely. They were the ones with the power, the answers, but they had no idea how constrained they were by his questions. They fumbled, they grew frustrated, and ultimately, they folded. The son, in this simulation, would live. "Fine," Mnookin conceded. "I suppose the FBI might have something to teach us." And guess what? This wasn't a fluke. When Voss later took that negotiation course, he was paired off against the top students. His first counterpart was a classic Harvard guy, brimming with intellectual superiority. The student would lay out an offer with an inescapable logic trap, and Voss would just calmly reply, "How am I supposed to do that?" The result? Voss didn't just win, he obliterated his opponent's budget. He took literally every dime the other student had to give, including money that was supposed to be held in reserve. The instructor was stunned. What was going on here? The Harvard students were playing chess, a game of logic and rules. Voss was playing poker. He was reading the player, not just the cards. He understood that negotiation isn't a rational process, it's an emotional one. He grasped a fundamental truth that the academics had missed. And what is that truth? We are not rational actors. No matter how much we try to dress up our decisions in mathematical theories, we are always animals, acting and reacting first and foremost from our deeply held but mostly invisible fears, needs, and desires. The Harvard approach was built on a false edifice of rationality. They had a script, a process, a sequence of A, B, C that was supposed to lead to X. But real life is messy. It's unpredictable. The FBI's techniques worked because they weren't intellectual. They were experiential. They were forged in crisis, where failure meant death. This is the first major trap we all fall into. We assume the person across from us is a logical being who will be swayed by a well-reasoned argument. We prepare our points, our data, our evidence, but we're preparing for the wrong game. And you'll never guess who first proved just how wrong that game was. Two academics, a psychologist and an economist, who showed the world that feeling is a form of thinking. The Two Minds: Why Feeling is Believing. In the 1980s, while Harvard was busy building its logical, problem-solving empire of negotiation with books like Getting to Yes, a quiet revolution was happening in the world of psychology. The architects were Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, and their work would eventually win a Nobel Prize and create the entire field of behavioral economics. What they discovered is something that feels self-evident, yet it shatters the foundation of traditional negotiation theory. People, they proved, are neither fully rational nor completely selfish. Kahneman's groundbreaking book, Thinking Fast and Slow, breaks down our thinking process into two systems. System 1 is our animal mind. It's fast, instinctive, intuitive, and emotional. It's that gut feeling, that knee-jerk reaction, the voice that whispers to you from a place you can't quite identify. It's the part of you that reacts first. System 2 is our rational mind. It's slow, deliberative, and logical. This is the mind that weighs pros and cons, that does the math, that constructs the arguments. This is the mind that traditional negotiation theory tries to appeal to. And here is the crucial discovery. Which system do you think is in charge? Which one holds the real power? It's not even a contest. System 1, the emotional animal, is far more influential. In fact, Kahneman showed that System 1 guides and steers our rational thoughts, our gut feelings, our inarticulate impressions, our emotional reactions. These are the springs that feed the river of our deliberate choices. We have an emotional reaction first, System 1, and then our logical mind, System 2, scrambles to construct a rational justification for that feeling. Now follow this line of reasoning. If you can influence your counterpart's emotional, System 1 thinking, you can guide their rational, System 2 conclusions. This is exactly what Chris Voss did at Harvard. When he asked, "How am I supposed to do that?" he wasn't appealing to logic. He was triggering an emotional, System 1 reaction in his counterparts. They felt that their offer was inadequate. They felt the discomfort of having to solve his problem. And only after that feeling took hold did their System 2 mind kick in to rationalize a new, better offer. This changes everything, doesn't it? It means that trying to negotiate based purely on System 2 logic, without the tools to understand and manipulate the underlying System 1 emotional currents, is like trying to make an omelet without knowing how to crack an egg. And this is where the FBI's story takes a fascinating turn. After a series of devastating failures in the early 1990s, like the sieges at Ruby Ridge and Waco, it became glaringly obvious that the logical, getting to yes approach was failing them. How do you devise a mutually beneficial, win-win solution with a man who believes he's the Messiah? You don't. The playbook was broken. So while the Ivy Leagues continued to preach math and economics, the FBI, the so-called meatheads, did something radical. They became experts in emotion. They became masters of empathy. They realized that if the vast majority of their negotiations were with people in emotional crisis, their skills had to laser focus on the animal, the irrational. The goal wasn't to win an argument. The goal was to change behavior. And to do that, you first had to change the emotional environment. You had to calm people down, establish rapport, gain trust, and understand their needs. The central concept they developed is something called tactical empathy. And no, this isn't about being nice or feeling sorry for the other person. That's sympathy. Empathy is the ability to recognize your counterpart's perspective and vocalize that recognition. It's listening as a martial art. It's the most active thing you can do, a way to gain access to the mind of another person. This is the foundation of the new rules. It starts with a simple, universally applicable premise. People want to be understood and accepted. Listening, true and intense listening, is the cheapest yet most effective concession you can ever make. When people feel listened to, they listen to themselves more carefully. They become less defensive. They open up. And in that space, that's where the magic of negotiation happens. That's where you start to gain real influence. So how do you do it? How do you become an active listener, a master of tactical empathy? It begins with a technique that feels so simple, it's almost laughable. But in its simplicity lies a power that borders on a Jedi mind trick. Be a mirror, the Jedi mind trick of negotiation. Let's go to Brooklyn, September 30th, 1993. A crisp autumn morning. Two masked men storm a Chase Manhattan bank. They pistol whip a security guard and a teller. One robber puts the barrel of his gun in another teller's mouth and pulls the trigger on an empty chamber. "Next one is real," he says. "Now open the vault." This was Chris Voss's first major in-your-face hostage negotiation. The situation was a mess of misinformation. The lead negotiator for the police, a guy named Joe, was doing a decent job, but he was stuck. He was trying to be a problem solver, pushing too hard, moving too fast, a classic mistake. The lead hostage taker, a man they would later identify as Chris Voss, was a master of confusion. He was running his own counterintelligence operation, feeding them lies, trying to buy time. He claimed there were multiple conspirators with him, that they were more dangerous than he was. It was all a smokescreen. After 5 hours of getting nowhere, the lieutenant in charge made a call. He pulled Joe off the phone and put Voss in. It was a move to shake things up. Watts, the bank robber, was used to ending calls abruptly. Voss's first job was just to keep him talking. So what did he do? He deployed a secret weapon. Not a new argument, not a new offer, a new voice. He switched into what he calls the late-night FM DJ voice. You know the one. Deep, soft, slow, and reassuring. It's the voice of calm and reason. When you speak slowly, with a downward inflection, you signal one thing: I'm in control. It radiates warmth and acceptance. It reaches into the other person's brain and flips the emotional switch from anxious to calm. Watts immediately noticed the change. "Hey, what happened to Joe?" he demanded. Voss didn't ask a question. He made a calm, downward inflecting statement. "Joe's gone. This is Chris. You're talking to me now. Done deal." The new reality was set. But the voice was just the delivery system. The real technique was about to be deployed. Voss needed information. He needed to break through Watts's defenses. So he used a technique called mirroring. What is mirroring? It's essentially imitation. It's a neurobehavioral pattern where we copy each other to comfort each other. We do it unconsciously all the time, matching speech patterns, body language, tone of voice. It's a biological imperative. We fear what's different and are drawn to what's similar. Conscious mirroring, then, is the art of insinuating similarity. It signals to your counterpart's unconscious mind, "Trust me, we're alike." For the FBI, a mirror is laughably simple. You just repeat the last 3 words or the critical 1 to 3 words of what someone has just said. That's it. It's the closest thing to a magic trick in the entire negotiating skill set. Here's how it played out. Voss needed to confirm Watts's identity. They had a lead on a van registered to him. Voss said, "We've been able to get a handle on the owners of all of the vehicles except this one in particular. Do you know anything about it?" Watts blurted out, "The other vehicle's not out there because you guys chased my driver away." Voss mirrored, "We chased your driver away?" Watts replied, "Well, when he seen the police, he cut." And just like that, the floodgates opened. By simply repeating Watts's own words back to him, Voss triggered the mirroring instinct. Watts started vomiting information, as Voss now calls it. He revealed details about an accomplice they knew nothing about. He gave them the information they needed to nail the getaway driver. He didn't even realize he was doing it. This technique is incredibly powerful. A study by psychologist Richard Wiseman compared waiters who used positive reinforcement, "Great choice, no problem," with waiters who simply mirrored their customers' orders by repeating them back. The result? The mirroring waiters received 70% higher tips. Why? Because mirroring makes the other person feel listened to, validated, and safe. It makes them want to elaborate, to sustain the connection. You're not asking them a question. You're not challenging them. You're just reflecting their own words, and that invites them to expand. The key is to deliver the mirror with a genuine tone of curiosity. It's a question. The intention should always be, please, help me understand. Every time you mirror someone, they will reword what they've said. They will never say it exactly the same way twice. This process gives you clarity, signals respect, and keeps them talking. This is the first step up the behavioral change stairway, active listening. You use the DJ voice to create a calm space. You use mirrors to build rapport and gather information. You slow the process down. Remember, if someone is talking, they're not shooting. The goal in these early stages is not to solve the problem. The goal is to identify your counterpart's actual needs and to get them feeling safe enough to talk and talk and talk some more. But what happens when the conversation is charged with negative emotions? What do you do when your counterpart is angry, fearful, or distrustful? Just mirroring their words isn't enough. You have to go deeper. You have to address the emotion itself. And for that, you need another tool. One that allows you to name the monster in the room, and by naming it, rob it of its power. Hey there, do you like this audio summary? Then take 2 seconds of your time and click on subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. With this simple action, you will receive many more free high-quality summaries every single week. You can also send us your appreciation with a simple like on this video. Thank you, and let's go on. Part 2. The power of tactical empathy. Don't feel their pain. Label it. Harlem, 1998. An apartment on the 27th floor. Inside, at least 3 heavily armed fugitives who had recently been in a shootout with a rival gang. Outside, the FBI SWAT team, snipers on the rooftops, and Chris Voss, the primary negotiator. There was just one problem. They had no phone number to call into the apartment. So, for 6 straight hours, Voss spoke through the solid wood of the apartment door. What did he say? He didn't issue commands. He didn't ask what they wanted. He used his late-night DJ voice. And he did something that goes against every instinct for self-preservation in a tense situation. He vocalized their worst fears. "It looks like you don't want to come out," he said, over and over. "It seems like you worry that if you open the door, we'll come in with guns blazing. It looks like you don't want to go back to jail." For 6 hours, nothing. Silence. Was it working? And then, just as they were about to give up, a sniper radioed in. A curtain had moved. A few moments later, the door creaked open. First one woman, then all 3 fugitives emerged, hands in the air. Later, when Voss asked them why they finally gave in, they all gave the same answer. "We didn't want to get caught or get shot, but you calmed us down," they said. "We finally believed you wouldn't go away, so we just came out." What Voss had done through that door is a technique called labeling, and it is one of the most powerful tools of tactical empathy. Labeling is the act of validating someone's emotion by acknowledging it. You give their emotion a name, and in doing so, you show them you understand how they feel. Think of it as a shortcut to intimacy. It gets you close to someone without asking prying personal questions. The first step is to detect the emotion. You pay close attention to their words, their tone, and their body language. What Voss calls the trinity of words, music, and dance. You're looking for changes, for incongruities. If their voice goes flat when they mention a colleague, or their mouth turns down when they say everything's fine, you've spotted an emotion. The next step is to label it aloud. The phrasing is critical. Labels almost always begin with the same neutral, softening words. It seems like, it sounds like, it looks like. Notice, you don't say, I think you feel, or what I'm hearing is. The word I puts their guard up. It makes it about you. But phrasing it as, it seems like, frames it as a neutral observation. It takes the sting out of it and encourages them to respond. And if you're wrong, that's fine. You can simply say, I didn't say that's what it was. I just said it seems like that. And now for the most important part. What do you do after you've thrown out a label? You shut up. Silence. You let the label do its work. The label's power is that it invites the other person to reveal themselves. But why is this so effective, especially with negative emotions? Here's where the psychology gets fascinating. A brain imaging study at UCLA found that when people were shown photos of faces with strong emotions, the fear center of their brain, the amygdala, lit up. But when they were asked to label the emotion they were seeing, the activity moved from the emotional, reactive part of the brain to the rational, thinking part. In other words, labeling an emotion disrupts its raw intensity. Naming a fear, exposing it to the daylight, makes it less frightening. This is the key to de-escalation. Labeling negatives diffuses them. When you're dealing with an angry or fearful person, your first move is to label their fear. I'll give you a fantastic, almost comical example of this in action. Early in his career, Voss made a procedural mistake and angered the top FBI official in Canada by entering the country without getting proper clearance. He knew he had to call and fix it, or risk being expelled. This top official was likely feeling disrespected and angry. So how did Voss open the call? Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. A long pause on the other end. Who is this? Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's Chris Voss. Again, a long silence. The official could have thrown him out, but by immediately and humorously acknowledging the negative dynamic, Voss had diffused it. The official ended up clearing the paperwork for him. This is a technique Voss calls an accusation audit. You start a difficult conversation by listing every terrible thing your counterpart could say about you. I know you probably think we're the typical big company trying to squeeze the little guy. You may feel like we've treated you unfairly. By saying it first, you take the sting out. You bathe their fears in sunlight, bleaching them of their power. It shows them that you understand their position, and it builds a safe zone of empathy. But it's not just about diffusing negatives. Labeling positives reinforces them. Remember the story of the Girl Scout fundraiser? She was meeting with a wealthy potential donor who kept rejecting every project presented. The fundraiser was getting frustrated, but she paused and used a label. It seems that you are really passionate about this gift and want to find the right project reflecting the opportunities and life-changing experiences the Girl Scouts gave you. And with that, the difficult woman's entire demeanor changed. You understand me, she said, and wrote a check without even specifying a project. The fundraiser had uncovered the underlying emotion. The issue wasn't the projects. It was the donor's need to feel that her personal history and passion were understood. That's the transformative power of a good label. It digs beneath the surface-level arguments and uncovers the primary emotional drivers. So the second step up the behavioral change stairway is empathy. You achieve it through labeling. But what's the next step? Once you've established rapport and empathy, how do you start to build agreement? It requires triggering two of the most powerful words in any negotiation. And here's a hint. Those words are not "yes, I agree." The two words that immediately transform any negotiation. Let's go to the southern Philippines, August 2000. The militant Islamic group Abu Sayyaf has kidnapped a 24-year-old American named Jeffrey Schilling and is demanding a $10 million ransom. Voss is sent to run the negotiations. The lead adversary is a man named Abu Sabaya, a veteran sociopath with a flair for the dramatic and a massive ego. He loved the media and would give interviews in English so the world could hear him on CNN. For months, the negotiation was a deadlock. Sabaya refused to budge from his $10 million demand, framing it as war damages for 500 years of oppression against Muslims in the Philippines. No amount of logic could move him. Any attempt to reason with him that Jeffrey Schilling had nothing to do with this history fell on deaf ears. The negotiation was going nowhere. Voss and his team decided they needed to hit the reset switch. They had to get Sabaya off the war damages nonsense. But how? They couldn't argue him out of it. They couldn't reason him out of it. So they decided to try something else. They decided to get him to say, "That's right." Here's the distinction that will change your entire approach to getting agreement. There's a world of difference between "you're right" and "that's right." When someone is bothering you and you just want them to go away, what do you say? "You're right." It's a verbal brush-off. It's a way to appease them without agreeing to anything. It signals the end of the conversation. It means they've stopped listening. Voss learned this lesson the hard way when he was a volunteer at a suicide hotline. A caller congratulated him on doing a great job, and his supervisor later told him that was a sign of failure. "If they think you did it," the supervisor said, "how is he going to help himself?" The caller's yes was counterfeit, designed to make Voss feel good enough to leave him alone. "That's right," on the other hand, is pure gold. It's a moment of epiphany. It's the sound of someone embracing what you've just said, of them internalizing it and making it their own. When your counterpart says "that's right," they are signaling that they feel completely and utterly understood. And at that moment, a breakthrough becomes possible. So, how do you trigger it? You use a summary. A good summary is a combination of re-articulating the meaning of what your counterpart has said, paraphrasing, plus an acknowledgement of the emotions underlying that meaning, labeling. It's the art of repeating the world according to them, so completely and accurately that the only possible response is "that's right." This is what Voss instructed his Filipino counterpart Benji to do with Abu Sabaya. He told Benji to stop arguing, stop reasoning, and just listen. Use mirrors, minimal encouragers, labels. And then he told him to deliver a full summary of Sabaya's entire narrative. The 500 years of oppression, the atrocities, the fishing rights, the anger, the unfairness, all of it. So in their next call, that's exactly what Benji did. He listened, and then he repeated back Sabaya's version of history, acknowledging the powerful emotions that came with it. There was a long silence on the line, nearly a minute. Then Sabaya spoke. "That's right," he said. And what happened next? The war damages demand vanished. It was never mentioned again. The negotiation was completely transformed. Sabaya started bargaining on the price of the commodity he held, Jeffrey Schilling. While Schilling ultimately escaped, Sabaya himself later admitted the power of what Benji had done. In a final call, he told Benji, "I was going to hurt Jeffrey. I don't know what you did to keep me from doing that, but whatever it was, it worked." That is the power of "that's right." It is the moment when unconditional positive regard is established, and you can begin to exert real influence. It's the third step up the behavioral change stairway. Rapport. This works in any context. That pharmaceutical sales rep who was trying to sell a new drug to a skeptical doctor, she was getting nowhere by touting the benefits of her product. So she changed her approach. She summarized the doctor's own passion. "Doctor, you seemed very passionate about treating your patients and how you worked hard to tailor the specific treatment to each and every patient." The doctor looked at her as if for the first time. "That's right," he said, and the walls came down. He opened up, she listened, and she made the sale. This is a game-changing tool. Stop trying to get your counterpart to say yes. Stop accepting you're right as a victory. Start aiming for that's right. It is the key that unlocks the door to real, gut-level agreement and behavioral change. But once you have that rapport, there's another word you need to master. A word we've all been conditioned to fear, but one that, for a good negotiator, is pure gold. Beware yes, master no. Think about that telemarketer who calls you during dinner. Their entire script is a funnel, designed to force you down a path with only one exit. Yes. Do you enjoy a nice glass of water? Yes, but, like me, I bet you like crisp, clean water, right? Yes, but how does it make you feel? Trapped, defensive, your muscles tighten. You just want to scream no, even if it's untrue. No, I do not need water. I'm a camel. We have been conditioned to fetishize yes and demonize no. We talk about the fear of rejection, the pain of hearing no, but we have it completely backward. Pushing hard for yes doesn't get you closer to a win. It just angers the other side. For a good negotiator, no is not the end of the negotiation. It's the beginning. Why is no so powerful? Because no is protection. It's not a rejection of you. It's a statement of autonomy. It's a way for the other person to feel safe and in control. People have a deep, universal need to feel in control. When you give them permission to say no, their emotional defenses come down. They relax, and in that relaxed state, they become open to actually listening to your proposal. No is not failure. It's an answer that opens the path forward. It seldom means I have considered all the facts and made a final decision. More often, it's a temporary decision to maintain the status quo, because change is scary. No is often just a way of saying, I am not ready to agree yet. You are making me feel uncomfortable. I do not understand. I don't think I can afford it. I need more information. Great negotiators don't fear no. They seek it out. One of the most powerful things you can do is to give your counterpart permission to say no right from the outset. Instead of asking, do you have a few minutes to talk? Try, is now a bad time to talk? The second question is designed to get a no. And if they say no, it's not a bad time, you have their undivided attention. If they say yes, it is, they'll often tell you a better time to call. You've given them control, and that makes them comfortable. There's even a technique to force a no from someone who is being indecisive or isn't listening. You can intentionally mislabel one of their emotions or desires. So it seems that you're eager to leave your job. You might say to someone who clearly wants to stay. This forces them to correct you. No, that's not it. This is it. You've broken through their distraction and engaged them. But here's the most potent use of this principle. There's nothing more frustrating than being ignored. You send an email and get no reply. You follow up politely and still, silence. It makes you feel invisible. What do? You provoke a no with a simple one-sentence email. Have you given up on this project? This question is magic. It's polite but direct. It plays on the human aversion to loss. Nobody wants to be the one to give up. The natural, instinctive response is to reply immediately. No, we haven't given up. We've just been swamped, but... And just like that, you've re-engaged them. You've brought your project back to the top of their priority list. This is the fourth step of the behavioral change stairway: influence. You've used listening and empathy to build rapport. Now you're starting to shape the conversation. You've mastered no. You've triggered that's right. You've built a foundation of trust and understanding. Now, and only now, are you ready for the final step. Now, you are ready to ask for what you want. And you're not going to do it by making a statement. You're going to do it by asking a very specific kind of question. Part 3. Bending reality and winning the game. Create the illusion of control with calibrated questions. Let's return to that drug dealer in Pittsburgh. His girlfriend has been kidnapped by a rival dealer, and in a moment of desperation, he's come to the FBI for help. The agents are in the car with him as he's on the phone with the kidnapper. Now, the standard FBI procedure at the time was to ask a specific, factual, proof-of-life question, like, what's the name of her childhood teddy bear? But this dealer hadn't been coached. He just blurted out, "Hey dog, how do I know she's all right?" And a stunning thing happened. The kidnapper went silent. He was forced to stop and think. And then he volunteered to put the girlfriend on the phone. "I'll put her on the phone," he said, as if it were his own brilliant idea. This was the epiphany that changed everything for Chris Voss. That simple, natural how question had done something remarkable. It hadn't made a demand. It hadn't triggered defensiveness. It had removed the aggression from the situation and invited the kidnapper to solve the problem. And in doing so, it gave the kidnapper the illusion of control. He thought he was in charge, but the drug dealer and the FBI had just framed the entire conversation. This is the power of calibrated questions. These are open-ended questions, carefully designed to remove aggression, acknowledge the other side, and gently nudge them toward your way of thinking. They are the tools you use to achieve the final step of the behavioral change stairway. Behavioral change. The rules for crafting them are simple but precise. First, they avoid words like can, is, are, or do, which can be answered with a simple yes or no. Second, they almost always start with one of two words, what or how. That's it. Who, when, and where tend to elicit simple facts. Why is almost always heard as an accusation and makes people defensive. Why did you do that is a verbal punch. But what and how are different. They are exploratory. They ask for help. They implicitly acknowledge the other side's expertise and power. Think about the difference. Can you give me a discount? Is a yes/no question that puts pressure on your counterpart. But how am I supposed to pay that? Is a request for collaboration. It's a gentle way of saying no that invites them to find a solution. It makes them contemplate your problem. Here are some of the most powerful calibrated questions you can use in any negotiation. What is the biggest challenge you face? What about this is important to you? How can we solve this problem? What are we trying to accomplish here? And the all-time greatest. How am I supposed to do that? The implication is always, I want what you want, but I need your intelligence to overcome the problem. This is incredibly appealing to aggressive or ego-driven counterparts. You are asking for their help, which triggers goodwill. And you are engineering a situation where they are now using their mental energy to solve your challenges. They are internalizing your obstacles as their own. And in doing so, they are designing a solution. Your solution. Remember that CEO who was refusing to pay my client, the marketing strategist? Her first instinct was to argue, to prove she was right. But that would have led to a showdown. Instead, she used a script based on calibrated questions. After re-engaging him with the magic email, she asked, "How does this bill violate our agreement?" And, "How am I supposed to accept?" The result? He apologized, explained the internal problems, and paid her in full within 48 hours. She never had to get aggressive. She just asked for help. This is listener's judo. You are not strong-arming your opponent. You are using their energy to achieve your goals. You are shaping the negotiating environment, giving them the illusion of control, and guiding them to the solution you desire, all while making them think it was their idea. And that is the art of letting someone else have your way. Now that you have the core tools, it's time to enter the final phase. The bargaining, the haggling over price. This is where most people get anxious. But with the right system, it can be the most predictable part of the process. Bargain hard, the Ackerman system. Let's talk about buying a car. Chris Voss fell in love with a red Toyota 4Runner. Not just red, salsa red pearl. He was obsessed, but there was only one available in the entire Washington, D.C. area. The dealer had all the leverage. The sticker price was $36,000. Voss sat down, centered himself, and prepared to bargain. But he didn't start with a logical argument about market value. He used a precise, psychologically tuned system. A system he learned not at Harvard, but from an ex-CIA operative named Mike Ackerman, who specialized in kidnapped for ransom consulting. It's a system designed to beat the lazy, predictable dynamic of meeting in the middle. Here are the steps of the Ackerman model. Set your target price, your goal. This is the price you would be happy with. For Voss, it was $30,000. Your first offer is an extreme anchor, 65% of your target price. This is designed to be a shock, to reset your counterpart's expectations. Plan 3 raises of decreasing increments. The pattern is generally to 85%, 95%, and finally 100% of your target price. Use lots of empathy and calibrated questions to soften the nose and get the other side to counter before you raise your offer. You want to make them work for every concession. Use precise, non-round numbers. A number like $37,893 feels like it's the result of careful calculation. A round number, like $38,000, feels like a placeholder. On your final offer, throw in a non-monetary item that they probably don't want to signal that you are at your absolute limit. Let's see how Voss did it. His target was $30,000. He didn't offer 65% because in a car negotiation, that would be insulting and end the conversation. He adjusted. His first offer was his target, $30,000 cash today. This was his anchor. The salesman, Stan, came back with the sticker price of $36,000. Voss's response? A calibrated question. How am I supposed to do that? Delivered deferentially. He then used empathy and soft nose. It's a beautiful truck. It's worth more than what I'm offering. I'm sorry, this is really embarrassing. I just can't do that price. Stan went to his manager and came back with a new offer, $34,000. Voss let the silence linger, then gently rejected it again. Stan came back with $32,500 with a piece of paper that said, "You win," in big letters. Voss was effusive with his gratitude. "I am so grateful. You've been very generous. I'm sorry, I just can't do that." Notice the pattern. He's not making counteroffers. He is forcing the other side to bid against itself. He is using empathy to show respect while holding his ground. Finally, Stan came back defeated. $30,000, we can do that. Voss drove off in his dream truck at his price. The genius of this system is that it builds in all the psychological tactics we've discussed. The extreme anchor triggers a fight or flight response, limiting their cognitive abilities. The incremental raises play on the norm of reciprocity, making them feel like they're winning concessions and encouraging them to give some in return. Research shows that people who get concessions feel better about the process, even if they end up with a worse deal. And the non-round numbers and non-monetary items give your final offer a powerful feeling of finality. Before you enter any bargaining session, you must prepare. As Voss says, when the pressure is on, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your highest level of preparation. Know your target price, plan your Ackerman sequence, and prepare your labels and calibrated questions. But there is one final piece of the puzzle, the most powerful, game-changing information of all. The things you don't even know you don't know. Find the Black Swan, June 17, 1981. Rochester, New York. A man named William Griffin has shot 3 people, killing 2, before taking 9 hostages in a bank. He is in a violent standoff with police and the FBI. He issues a deadline. Either the police have a shootout with him in the parking lot at 3 p.m., or he will start killing hostages. The negotiators on the scene relied on what they knew, and one of the known knowns of hostage negotiation was an ironclad rule. No hostage taker had ever killed a hostage on a deadline. The deadline was always a tactic to focus the mind, a way to get to the real demands of money and escape. It was the truth, until it wasn't. At exactly 3 p.m., Griffin shot a 29-year-old teller named Margaret Moore, blowing her through the glass doors of the bank. He then walked to a window in full view of a police sniper and waited. The sniper took the shot, and the standoff was over. The negotiators had been blindsided by a black swan. This is a term popularized by the risk analyst Nassim Nicholas Taleb. A black swan is an event or piece of information that is outside our regular expectations, something we never imagined, but that once it appears, changes everything. Until 1697, the entire Western world knew that all swans were white. It was an unassailable fact. Then, an explorer went to Australia and saw a black swan. And suddenly the unthinkable was real. In any negotiation, there are 3 types of information. Known knowns, the things we know, like the other side's offer and our own goals. Known unknowns, the things we know exist, but we don't know the specifics, like what their boss might be thinking. These are the wild cards. Unknown unknowns, the pieces of information we've never imagined, but that would be game-changing if uncovered. These are the black swans. The FBI negotiators in Rochester were shackled by their known knowns. They assumed Griffin wanted what every other hostage taker wanted. But there were clues, black swans they missed. Griffin had already killed people that morning without making any demands. A note was found in his apartment that began, "After the police take my life." The real black swan was that Griffin's goal wasn't to escape. It was suicide by cop. He wanted to die. Because the negotiators couldn't see this, Margaret Moore paid with her life. The lesson is profound. We must let what we know guide us, but not blind us. Every negotiation is a new world. And in every negotiation, there are at least 3 black swans on each side. 3 pieces of information that, if discovered, would change everything. Finding them requires a new way of listening, a new level of curiosity. You have to ask yourself, why are they communicating what they are communicating right now? You have to probe for the things that don't make sense, the crazy behavior. When something seems irrational, it's not. It's a clue. It means your counterpart is acting based on information, constraints, or interests that you don't yet see. So, how do you find them? Get FaceTime. You can't uncover these subtleties over email. You need to read the tone, the body language, the unguarded moments before and after the formal meeting. Exploit the similarity principle. We trust people who are like us. Dig for what makes them tick, their hobbies, their background, their religion, their worldview. When you can show you share common ground, you gain influence. Listen for their religion. When Dwight Watson, the tobacco farmer, threatened to blow up his tractor on the National Mall, the negotiation was tense. But the negotiators listened deeply. They heard his references to God and his military background. A female negotiator had a brilliant insight. If Christ came out on the dawn of the 3rd day, why not Watson? They framed his surrender in the language of his own worldview, giving him an honorable way out. He surrendered peacefully. Finding black swans is what gives you true leverage. Leverage isn't about power. It's about persuading your counterpart that they have something to lose if the deal falls through. And the most powerful leverage comes from the information you uncover, the needs and fears they don't even realize they're revealing. This is the pinnacle of negotiation. It's moving beyond a simple game of moves and countermoves into a 3-dimensional world of emotion, psychology, and discovery. It's the final rule. Always be searching for the black swan. Conclusion: the heart of collaboration. We've traveled a long way, from the tidy theories of Harvard to the brutal realities of hostage standoffs. We've learned that negotiation is not a logical battle, but an emotional journey of discovery. The tools we've uncovered, the late-night DJ voice, mirroring, labeling, mastering no, triggering that's right, calibrated questions, the Ackerman system, and the hunt for black swans, are not tricks. They are instruments of understanding. The great secret of negotiation is that it is not about conflict. It is about collaboration. The person across the table is not your adversary. They are your partner. The adversary is the situation. Your job is to listen so deeply, to understand their world so completely, that you can guide them to a solution that works for you, because they have come to see it as their own. Don't be afraid of conflict. Honest, clear conflict is what energizes the problem-solving process. It's what saves marriages and builds businesses. It's what allows you to get what you want, not by beating someone down, but by lifting them up. This is more than a set of techniques. It's a mindset. It's a way of moving through the world with curiosity, empathy, and a quiet confidence that you have the tools to handle any conversation life throws at you. You have been given the playbook. You now know the new rules. The journey doesn't end here. This audiobook summary has given you the map. The next step is yours. Don't just listen to these ideas. Practice them. Use them in small ways every day. Test them. Refine them. Make them your own. And if you are truly ready to master this art, I urge you to read the full book, Never Split the Difference. It will change not just how you negotiate, but how you live. Now, go out and start your next conversation.